Welcome back to Night Creepypasta Rules. Tonight, we're at a haunted Appalachian library with 3 deadly rules for the night shift. Break them, and you might just become another lost echo within its walls. Most libraries lent books. The Blackbriar Library, nestled deep in these Carolina mountains, collects patrons, and the late fees are steeper than you can imagine. That unsettling local phrase echoed in my mind as I guided my old car up the winding gravel track, leaving the last vestiges of cell signal and paved certainty far behind. Dusk settled early in this valley, the late autumn sun already dipping behind the looming western ridge, painting the dense canopy of pine and fading hardwoods in strokes of bruised purple and melancholy gold. The air, filtering through my open window, is crisp, smelling sharply of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint, sweet scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney, maybe belonging to the library's caretaker, my new employer of sorts. My name is Elias Thorne. I took this job, night custodian and archive assistant at the remote, semi-private Blackbriar Library, seeking refuge. Not from the law, nothing so dramatic. Just from noise, the relentless noise of city life. The louder noise of past failures. Specifically, the catastrophic miscataloguing incident at the university archive that had quietly but effectively ended my budding academic career. Guilt clung to me like damp wool. This job, this isolation surrounded by silent books, felt like a necessary penance, a chance to regain footing through meticulous quiet work, preservation, order, things I desperately needed to reassert, perhaps in myself as much as in the dusty archives. The library building itself was a marvel and a monstrosity, a dark stone heart flanked by timber wings, built in the late 19th century by the eccentric coal and timber baron Hezekiah Blackbriar. It loomed against the mountainside, windows like dark eyes under heavy brows of ivy. Beautiful, but undeniably forbidding. Old man Hemlock, the day caretaker, whose family had apparently served the Blackbriars for generations, met me on the wide stone porch as the last light faded. He was weathered as the surrounding mountains, clad in worn flannel and denim, with eyes the color of a stormy sky that seemed to miss nothing. Evening, he grunted, handing me a heavy ring of iron keys without preamble. His handshake, when I offered one, was brief, his grip surprisingly strong, his skin cool despite the day's lingering warmth. She's all yours till sunup. Keep the generator topped off. Make the rounds. Don't touch Blackbriar's personal study on the mezzanine. Lock's busted, but consider it sealed. And he paused, fixing me with that sharp gaze. Mind the house rules. House rules? House rules? I asked, expecting notes on thermostats or leaky pipes. Just the way she is, Hemlock said, voice dropping slightly. He ticked them off on his fingers. 1, book takes a tumble off a shelf. Leave it lay right where it landed. Don't put it back till morning light hits it. He ignored my questioning look. 2, mirror at the end of the west gallery. Fine piece of glass. Shows reflections. 3, you'll likely see ink around. Calico cat, mostly black, big fella. Lives here. Just, if you see him heading for the door when you leave, make sure he stays inside. Don't let him follow you down the track. He belongs here. Understand? Cat, mirror, fallen books. It sounded like the bizarre folklore Sarah, the librarian down in Silva, collected. But Hemlock's tone wasn't folksy. It was pragmatic, deadly serious. My past failure echoed, follow procedure, no matter how strange. Understood, I said, forcing confidence I didn't feel. Hemlock grunted again, satisfied. Lights are mostly timed. Logbooks on the main desk. Anything structural, call me. Anything else? He trailed off, shrugging. You're on your own. He turned and shuffled down the path towards his cottage, visible through the trees, leaving me alone with the keys and the immense, silent library. The heavy oak door closed behind me with a soft, definitive thud, the sound swallowed instantly by the profound quiet within. Dust motes danced in the last rays of light, slanting through the tall, arched windows. The air smelled thick, ancient, paper, leather, beeswax, wood smoke, and beneath it all, that faint, cold mineral tang. Towering shelves rose into the gloom like ancient trees in a petrified forest. As I stood there, letting my eyes adjust, oriented myself towards the main circulation desk, I saw him, sauntering out from between two towering shelves labeled Appalachian Folklore, a large calico cat, mostly black, with jagged patches of ginger and white, stopped and regarded me silently. Its eyes were a startling luminous green, holding an unnerving stillness, an intelligence that felt far beyond feline. Ink. He watched me for a long moment, then turned with fluid silence and vanished back into the shadowed aisle. Just a cat, I told myself, my hand tightening on the cold iron keys. Just an old building making noises. Just strange rules from a superstitious old caretaker. But as I walked towards the main desk to begin my shift, a faint but distinct creaking sound emanated from the high, vaulted ceiling directly above me. I froze, remembering Rule 1's implication, forcing my gaze downwards towards the worn floorboards. The sound stopped. The silence pressed back in, heavy and watchful. This wasn't just about preserving books. This was about surviving the night. My first few nights at Blackbriar settled into a pattern of profound silence, punctuated by unnerving anomalies. The library, once dead patrons and Hemlock departed, transformed. It became a breathing entity, its creaks and groans less like settling, and more like quiet inhalation. Its shadows deeper, seeming to pool in corners and stretch towards me. As I made my hourly rounds with a heavy flashlight and heavier apprehension, I stuck to the main, well-lit areas initially, organizing the circulation desk, familiarizing myself with the public catalog system. I even attempted some of my own research during the long quiet hours, looking into Hezekiah Blackbriar. Zara, down at the Silva County Library, proved an invaluable resource via carefully worded emails exchanged during the day. She dug up old newspaper archives, census records, architectural notes. Hezekiah was brilliant, obsessive, and reclusive, she wrote back after a few days. Poured his fortune into building the Athenaeum in the late 1800s, supposedly as a repository for Appalachian essence, whatever that means. Collected not just books and artifacts, but oral histories, folk magic traditions, some say even local spirits through strange rituals. His wife died young. 2 children vanished from records. Local lore varies wildly, blaming illness, accidents, or something darker tied to Hezekiah's experiments. He died alone in the library years later. The place has been run by a private trust ever since, mostly closed off. Spirits? Blinding rituals? The research amplified my unease. I started noticing more. Cold spots weren't just drafts. They lingered. Sometimes felt like they followed me briefly down an aisle. The faint sound of pages turning, a dry rustling, would sometimes drift from sections I knew were empty. Once in the local history section, I found a daguerreotype portrait of a stern-looking woman tucked inside a book on medicinal herbs. A woman bearing a strong resemblance to Hezekiah Blackbriar, but whose face appeared nowhere in the officially officiated family portraits. I carefully replaced it. A faint scent like dried lavender, and something vaguely antiseptic clinging to the page. Then came the first direct test of Rule 1. I was doing my midnight round in the cavernous main reading hall. Moonlight slanted through the high windows, illuminating dust motes. Absolute silence. Suddenly, from the philosophy and esoterica stacks across the room, a loud, solid thump echoed, followed by the unmistakable sliding, fluttering cascade of a large book hitting the floor. My heart leaped. Rule 1. Leave it lay. Don't argue with gravity in here. Every instinct screamed to investigate, to see which book, to reshelve it, restore order. The core of my failed past, the drive for meticulousness. But Hemlock's grim face, Sarah's warnings about the library's reputation, the sheer wrongness I felt in this place. I forced myself to stay put, logging the event from afar. 017, audible item displacement. Sector G, philosophy. No action per protocol 1. My hand trembled as I wrote. As I stood there, listening intently, a wave of palpable cold emanated from the direction of the fallen book, washing across the room, raising goosebumps on my arms. It felt not just cold, but charged, like static electricity, carrying a faint, almost inaudible high-frequency whine that made my teeth ache. It wasn't angry, necessarily, just potent, unstable. I backed away slowly, finished my round, avoiding Sector G entirely. The cold dissipated as I moved away. When I returned an hour later, for the next round, flashlight beams sweeping nervously across the floor where the book had fallen. There was nothing there. The space on the shelf, where it might have come from, looked undisturbed. No sign of the book anywhere. It hadn't just been reshelved. It felt like the event itself had been erased, except for the lingering chill in the air and the renewed fear in my gut. The incident spurred me to talk to Sarah again, more directly this time, during my next trip into town. We met at the small cafe near her library. "Okay, Elias," she said, after I vaguely described the acoustic anomalies and strict protocols, avoiding the word supernatural. "This goes beyond eccentric. Old buildings make noises, sure, but rules about not looking up, leaving fallen books, a cat you can't let outside. This sounds unhealthy, or worse." She leaned forward. My research turned up something else. Multiple mentions in old town council minutes, police logs from decades back, about people getting disoriented at Blackbriar, losing time, sometimes reported missing for hours or days, only to reappear with no memory, or found wandering miles away. One entry mentioned a previous caretaker. She hesitated, found dead in his car at the bottom of the mountain road, ruled an accident, lost control on a curve. But it was a clear night. Her words landed heavily. "Hemlock just says the place has its ways," I murmured, feeling cold despite the coffee. "Maybe Hemlock is part of the ways," Sarah countered gently but firmly. "Maybe he knows more than he's letting on. Or maybe he's just as trapped by it as anyone else." She reached across the table, her expression earnest. "Elias, maybe this isn't just about preserving old books. Maybe you should think about preserving yourself. Consider leaving." Leaving felt impossible now. My curiosity was fully ignited, tangled with fear, and that old familiar need to fix things, to understand the flawed system. But Sarah's worry, the story of the dead caretaker, they added weight to the rules, to the silence. That night, back at Blackbriar, the West Hall gallery beckoned. The mirror. Rule 2, don't linger. I told myself I was just doing my rounds, checking the area. But I paused in front of the large, ornate mirror, longer than a quick glance. My reflection looked back, pale, strained. Then the surface seemed to ripple, like heat haze. The reflection shifted. It was still me, but older, gaunter, wearing a dusty, old-fashioned caretaker's uniform I didn't own. I stood within the library's oldest archive room, in the reflection, surrounded by towering shelves, frantically sorting crumbling books, looking utterly trapped, hopeless. A low, mournful sighing sound seemed to emanate from the mirror itself. I recoiled, gasping, stumbling back from the glass. The image vanished instantly, leaving only my terrified present-day reflection staring back. Rule 2 wasn't just about seeing the future. It was about seeing potential confinements. Had I just glimpsed my own fate if I stayed? Or was it a warning? A manipulation? Shaken, I hurried away. As I left the gallery, I saw ink watching me from the shadows at the far end, its green eyes gleaming, utterly unreadable. The vision in the mirror, that fleeting glimpse of a future self, seemingly entombed within Blackbriar's dusty confines, haunted my waking hours and bled into my dreams. Was it a warning? A threat? A fixed point? I was now inexorably heading towards Rule 2's injunction. Against lingering felt less like a precaution, and more like a desperate attempt to avoid acknowledging a predetermined path laid out by the library itself. My research into Hezekiah Blackbriar intensified, driven now by a more personal fear. Was he still trapped here somehow? His obsession creating ripples that caught others? Sarah, bless her rational heart, tried to help from afar. She dug into land registry records, tax documents, anything that might shed light on the library's obscure trust ownership or Blackbriar's final years. "It's weird, Elias," she reported during a crackly phone call. "Ownership transferred to a blind trust right after his death, managed by an old Providence law firm that doesn't seem to exist anymore. Very little paper trail, but I found references in Hezekiah's architectural notes, cross-referenced with local folklore forums. Mentions of him binding a threshold guardian to the property. Something ancient tied to the valley itself, not just the building. Something to keep things in, and maybe keep things out. A threshold guardian. Ink. The realization solidified the cat's role beyond mere observation. It wasn't just a quirky house rule. Rule 3 was about managing a powerful, potentially non-physical entity bound to the library's perimeter. Ink's presence became more pointed after my lingering look in the mirror. It started appearing more frequently during my rounds, often materializing silently, just as I approached areas mentioned cryptically in Blackbriar's journal. The locked founder's study, the base of the silent grandfather clock, the entrance to the silent grandfather clock, damp, unused wine cellar. It wouldn't attack, wouldn't hiss. It would just be there, watching me with those unnervingly intelligent green eyes, a silent, furry admonition against curiosity. Sometimes it would leave things in my path. A dead shrew, normal enough. But once a small, perfectly preserved bird skull, bleached white, and another time, a single, antique iron key, heavily rusted, lying directly in the center of the main hall floor. I left the skull, pocketed the key, heart pounding. The test of Rule 3 came on a cold, clear night, frost glittering on the ground outside. My shift was ending. The library felt quiet, almost peaceful. After a night blessedly free of falling books or overhead footsteps, I locked the inner archive doors, did my final sweep, and headed towards the heavy main entrance, keys in hand, anticipating the crisp mountain air. Ink sat directly in front of the door, blocking my path, washing its face with meticulous indifference. "All right, Ink," I sighed, exhaustion making me bold. "Shift's over. Time for me to go." The cat stopped washing, looked up at me. A low, rumbling purr started deep in its chest, a sound that vibrated unpleasantly in the stillness, feeling less like contentment and more like idling machinery. It didn't move. Rule 3. Don't let it follow you home. Implicit. Get past it. Get out. Lock it inside. I took a step forward. Ink remained seated, but its eyes narrowed slightly. The purr deepened, taking on a rougher, grating quality. "Come on, cat," I said, trying to edge around it. It moved then, a blur of speed, darting past me towards the hallway leading deeper into the library, then reappearing silently behind me as I reached for the door bolts. It sat again, watching, waiting for me to open the door so it could potentially slip out. "Okay," This wasn't passive observation. This was active obstruction, or a test. My hand hovered over the heavy brass bolt. If I opened the door, could I be fast enough to slip out and pull it shut before ink darted through? It moved unnaturally fast. What were the complications Hemlock mentioned if it got out? Remembering the feeling of being watched outside the cabin in that other story. No. Focus Elias. Remembering the journal entries about binding, about containment. Keeping it inside felt critically important. I took a step away from the door, back towards the center of the hall, keeping my eyes on the cat. It watched me, head tilted. I walked slowly towards the West Hall gallery, towards the mirror. Ink didn't follow immediately, just watched. I reached the dim gallery entrance, risked a glance back. Ink remained by the main door, a silent sentinel, heart pounding. I walked down the gallery towards the mirror, telling myself I was just checking another part of the library before trying the door again. I reached the mirror, obeyed Rule 2. Quick glance only. My own pale face stared back, nothing else, and turned immediately. Ink was now sitting directly in the gallery entrance, blocking my way back to the main hall, its green eyes glowing faintly in the dimness. The low, grating purr resumed, louder now. It had trapped me. Panic flared. I was cut off from the main exit. Were there other ways out? Back doors? Windows? My mind raced through the library layout. The old cellar, maybe? As I backed away from the cat, deeper into the West Hall gallery, my foot hit something soft on the floor. A fallen book, small, bound in dark cloth. I hadn't heard it fall. Rule 1. Leave it. But ink was blocking the way out, and the book, it lay near a section marked local folklore and remedies. Maybe there was something in it. A way to handle the Guardian? It felt like a terrible, desperate choice, breaking one rule to potentially survive another. Ink watched me, its purr stopping, replaced by a low, expectant silence. The decision was mine, the book or the Guardian. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the frantic beat of my own heart. Ink remained blocking the gallery entrance, an implacable shadow with glowing green eyes. Before me lay the fallen book, radiating a faint sense of urgency, directly contradicting Rule 1. Behind me, the mirror, cold and silent, held the ghost of a terrifying reflection. Trapped, breaking Rule 1 felt like suicide after Hemlock's warnings and my own experiences. But trying to force my way past ink seemed equally dangerous. The cat wasn't just a cat. It was a manifestation of the library's will, its guardian. What if the fallen book was the key? Placed here deliberately. A test within a test. My gaze fell on the book's plain cover. No title visible. My research into local folklore, aided by Sarah, flashed in my mind. Tales of protective haints bound to places, appeased by specific rituals or knowledge. Tales of trickster spirits offering dangerous bargains. Blackbriar's journal spoke of resonant anchors, and using specific texts to harmonize discordant echoes. With ink watching my every move, I made a choice. Slowly, cautiously, I knelt beside the fallen book. I didn't pick it up immediately. Instead, remembering Hemlock's connection to the land, the local ways, I spoke softly to the book, to the echo it might contain, using a phrase Sarah had found referenced in connection with appeasing old Appalachian spirits. Not seeking to bind, I murmured, only to understand the passage. As I spoke, ink let out a soft, questioning mew, a surprisingly normal sound that broke the tension momentarily. It tilted its head, observing me. Was this the right approach? Heart still pounding, I gently touched the book's cover. No immediate cold, no static discharge. Encouraged, I carefully picked it up. It felt ordinary, just an old book. The cover was blank, worn smooth by time. I opened it. The pages weren't text. They were filled with intricate, hand-drawn illustrations of local plants and herbs, annotated in Hezekiah Blackbriar's familiar script, detailing not their botanical properties, but their supposed resonant qualities, which ones absorbed psychic echoes, which ones repelled certain influences, which ones could supposedly stabilize temporal friction. It was Blackbriar's hidden pharmacopoeia for dealing with the library's specific ailments. And tucked into the back, a pressed sprig of the exact herb hemlock grew by his cottage, mountain mint, described by Blackbriar as a potent grounding agent against spectral displacement. A tool, not a trap. Clutching the book, I stood up slowly. Not a trap. Clutching the book, I stood up slowly. Ink remained at the gallery entrance, but its posture seemed less hostile, more curious. Holding the herbal, I walked steadily towards it. I need to leave, Guardian, I said calmly, respectfully. My shift is over. Ink stared at me for a long moment, green eyes seeming to weigh my intent, the book I held, the herb now in my hand. Then, with a fluid movement, it stepped aside, clearing the doorway, and melted back into the shadows of the main hall. Relief washed over me, so potent I felt dizzy. I hurried to the main doors, unbolted them, and stepped out into the cold, clean pre-dawn air, pulling the heavy doors shut and locking them securely behind me. I didn't see Ink try to follow this time. My encounter with Hemlock later that morning was different. I didn't just report the incident. I showed him the herbal, asked him about Blackbriar's notes on resonant properties. Hemlock's usual gruffness gave way to wary surprise, then a dawning respect. Mountain mint, he murmured, examining the sprig. Aye, keeps things grounded. My granny taught me. He looked at me, then at the library. So, you picked up the book, and Ink let you pass. He shook his head slowly. Blackbriar wrote that rule in absolute. After his boy Thomas. Well, after Thomas disturbed a fallen text, and wasn't right afterwards. Never thought there was another way around it. He revealed more then, confirming my suspicions. The library did absorb echoes. Ink was the guardian bound by Blackbriar, meant to enforce the containment. The mirror did show dangerous futures, often fixed by the library's will once seen. Rule 3's. Shelving was an imperfect duplication, a dangerous glitch the library usually purged through unknown means. The clock seemed the likely candidate, though Hemlock admitted it hadn't chimed 13 in his lifetime. Its mechanism long time dormant. Until now, I realized with a chill, linking it to the duplicate I saw in the previous Outlines Chapter 4. Need to replan that. You changed something, Elias, Hemlock said grimly, handing back the mint sprig. By picking up that book and satisfying the Guardian. You stepped off the path Blackbriar laid down. Means the old rules, they might not work the same for you now. Might be more dangerous. Or he paused, looking towards the silent library. Might be a chance to find a different way. Just don't know if the library, or what's in it, will let you. His words resonated as I prepared for my next shift. I had survived all 3 rules, even intentionally broken one by interacting with the fallen herbal. I had knowledge from Blackbriar's hidden journal. I had, perhaps, earned the wary tolerance of the Guardian, but I had also, as Hemlock warned, stepped off the established path into unknown territory. That night the library felt different yet again. Still watchful, still ancient, but the rigid structure of the rules felt looser, more volatile. As I did my rounds, I noticed the hands on the grandfather clock in the main hall were no longer frozen. They pointed to 10 minutes past midnight, and the pendulum swung with a slow, steady, resonant sweep back and forth, keeping time once more. But was it keeping normal time? And what happened when this clock reached its 13th hour? The path forward felt treacherous, the rules uncertain, but for the first time, maybe, Just maybe, there was a chance to do more than just survive the night. There was a chance to understand. Okay, here are chapters 5, 6, and 7 to complete the story Blackbriar Library, continuing from the end of chapter 4, where Elias decided to interact with the fallen book, defying Rule 1, while Ink watched. This version incorporates all the cumulative feedback provided. Why? Ink's low, vibrating growl. A sound felt as much as heard, filled the narrow aisle, a clear warning resonating in the heavy silence. The fallen biography of Elias Ainsworth lay at my feet, feeling less like an inanimate object and more like a loaded question. Rule 1 demanded I ignore it, leave it for the library's own inscrutable process. Hemlock's fearful warnings echoed in my mind, but Blackbriar's journal, an unstable echo seeking release or reception, and the palpable wave of cold sorrow emanating from the book itself. It felt less like a trap and more like a desperate plea. It felt less like a trap and more like a desperate plea. My own past failures, the times I'd chosen caution over intervention, pricked at my conscience. I mean no harm, I whispered, directing the words as much to the watchful cat guardian as to the book itself. Just understanding. Ignoring Ink's intensified growl, I knelt slowly, deliberately, and reached out a trembling hand. The moment my fingertips brushed the worn leather cover, the air snapped cold, and the book pulsed with a faint internal energy. Simultaneously, Ink exploded into action. It launched itself from the shadows, not with a cat spring, but with unnatural force, a low hiss tearing the air. I threw myself sideways. The book clutched tight, as sharp claws raked the floorboards where I'd been kneeling. I scrambled back against the towering shelves, heart hammering. Ink landed silently, crouched low, tail lashing, green eyes blazing with cold fire. It was larger now, its form seeming to flicker, edges blurring into shadow. Holding the book like a shield, I felt the echo within surge, fragmented images flooding my mind. Moonlight on rhododendrons, the scratch of a pen on paper, intense loneliness, a final, terrifying darkness swallowing everything. Elias Ainsworth, trapped. Ink, listen, I shouted, trying to project calm over the terror. She doesn't belong archived like this, the creature hissed again, gathering itself to spring. Blackbriar's journal flashed in my mind. Resonance can be guided. True names hold power. Poetry is the key to her frequency. Elias Ainsworth, I yelled her full name, focusing my intent on the book, on the echo within. Your name is known. Your words remain. I fumbled, trying to recall a line from the poem Sarah had found for me. Something about the mountains holding memory. The peaks remember every sigh, I quoted desperately. Beneath the cold Appalachian sky, the book in my hands grew distinctly warm. A soft, sighing whisper escaped its pages, smelling faintly of honeysuckle and damp earth. Ink recoiled as if burned, a high-pitched shriek tearing from its throat, a sound that was part feline, part electronic static. The library itself seemed to groan around us. Lights flickered violently in the main hall beyond the aisle. Books rattled on nearby shelves. Ink's form flickered wildly, shadows momentarily detaching and snapping back. It stared at the book, then at me, confusion warring with its ingrained hostility. It seemed disrupted. I didn't press the advantage. Clutching the book, I slowly stood, keeping my eyes locked on the guardian. It watched me, wary now. Its growl subsided to a low, uncertain rumble. The immediate violent aggression had passed, replaced by a tense standoff. Holding the book carefully, I backed slowly away down the aisle, never turning my back on the creature. Ink didn't follow, just watched me go. Its luminous eyes narrowed in suspicion, and perhaps grudging acknowledgement. Back at the main desk, shaken, bleeding slightly from a scratch on my arm where a claw had grazed me, I examined the biography. It felt different. Still old, still fragile, but the intense coldness, the overwhelming sorrow was gone. It felt like just a book again. Had I released her, or merely quieted the echo by acknowledging her name, her work? The journal offered no clear answers, only theories on resonance discharge and archival reintegration. I didn't reshelve the book. Following a hunch, I carried it carefully to the small locked display case in the main hall dedicated to local authors. Using the antique key I had found earlier, the one left by ink, I unlocked the case and placed Delara Ainsworth's biography inside, among the published works, giving her echo, perhaps, a place of quiet honor instead of unstable imprisonment on a dusty shelf. As I locked the case, I felt a subtle shift in the library's atmosphere. The oppressive weight lessened almost imperceptibly. The silence felt less like waiting, more like listening. Ink appeared at the far end of the hall, regarded me silently for a long moment, then turned and vanished into the stacks without a sound. I had broken a primary rule, confronted the Guardian, and interacted directly with an archived echo, and I had survived. More than that, I felt I had made a small, positive change in the library's haunted ecosystem. But the cost, the consequences, the way Ink and the library itself would react moving forward, that remained terrifyingly unknown. I had stepped off Blackbriar's path. Now I had to find my own. The weeks following the Delara Ainsworth incident were marked by a tense, watchful quiet. The library felt different. The baseline level of ambient dread had lessened, replaced by a feeling of profound uncertainty, as if the old operating system had been disrupted and the new one was still booting, full of potential bugs and unknown protocols. Ink remained aloof, watchful, occasionally appearing at the end of aisles, its green eyes tracking me, but the overt hostility was gone, replaced by a wary assessment. I reported the incident cautiously to Hemlock, showed him the scratches, explained finding the fallen Ainsworth book, Ink's reaction, and how I'd used her name in poetry, then placed the book in the display case. He listened in stunned silence, pipe forgotten in his hand. "You talked it down," he finally managed, shaking his head in disbelief. Talked down an active echo and the Guardian. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Blackbriar himself wrote that direct engagement was suicide, that the echoes would overwhelm. The Guardian would tear you apart. Maybe he was wrong, I said quietly. Maybe just containing them isn't enough. Maybe they need acknowledgement. Hemlock was silent for a long time, staring towards the brooding library building. "Change things, son," he murmured finally. "You've gone and changed things proper. Don't know if it's for better or worse. But she," he nodded towards the library, "she knows you now. Knows you ain't just following the old rules." He sighed. "A plume of non-existent smoke means you're responsible now, in a way, for whatever comes next." His words resonated. I did feel responsible, and strangely, less afraid, replaced by a heavy sense of purpose. My research in Blackbriar's hidden journal intensified, no longer just seeking survival tips, but actively looking for ways to understand and manage the library's condition. I learned more about the other rules. The mirror indeed showed futures shaped by the library's archived intentions, making lingering dangerous as it cataloged the viewer into that potential timeline. Ink's role was confirmed as Guardian Jailer, its form perhaps shifting based on the library's needs or the nature of the echo it confronted. Zara, contacted via infrequent trips to town for signal, was relieved. I was alive but terrified by my increasingly strange accounts. "Elias, this isn't research anymore. It says ghost hunting," she pleaded. "That place is dangerous. What if you release something truly awful? Or get trapped yourself?" Her rational fear was a necessary anchor, reminding me of the stakes, but I couldn't turn back now. I felt inextricably linked to Blackbriar's legacy, to the trapped echoes. My role evolved. I became less a caretaker, more a cautious custodian of a deeply troubled archive. I still performed the basic duties, but spent more time observing, documenting anomalies, cross-referencing them with Blackbriar's notes, trying to anticipate patterns. When a book fell now, I approached with caution, assessing the feel of the echo before deciding whether to leave it or attempt a quiet ritual of acknowledgement based on my research. Sometimes leaving a specific herb, like the mountain mint, Hemlock grew. Sometimes reading a relevant passage aloud. Sometimes simply sitting nearby in quiet contemplation. Ink often watched these interactions from a distance, silent, inscrutable. The mirror remained an object of extreme caution, glanced at only fleetingly. The cat, our truce held, wary but stable. It no longer tried to follow me out, seemingly accepting my role within its domain, though its eye still held depths I couldn't fathom. Life settled into a new, strange rhythm, maintaining the fragile balance, decoding the library's secrets, managing the echoes. It was lonely, demanding work, the constant vigilance taxing, but there was a profound sense of purpose I'd never known before. I wasn't just preserving history. I felt like I was actively participating in mediating it, trying to bring a measure of peace to the library's troubled soul. I go nowhere. Then one night, reading through Blackbriar's final, almost incoherent journal entries, notes penned shortly before his death within these walls, I found it. A hastily scrawled addendum, almost an afterthought, referencing the library's core. The catalog itself resonates. Amendments possible during peak harmonic convergence. Requires the Guardian's assent. And the Caretaker's blood? A way to alter the library's core programming. To fundamentally change the rules, not just bend them. The journal entry trailed off, unfinished, but the implication was staggering. A path towards a more permanent solution, perhaps, but requiring Ink's cooperation. And a blood price. The final decision, the ultimate test of my new role, loomed. The peak harmonic convergence mentioned in Blackbriar's final note coincided, according to his charts, with a rare lunar eclipse visible over the Appalachians just before the winter solstice. As the date approached, the library grew restless. The subtle anomalies intensified. Louder whispers echoed between the stacks. Cold spots lingered longer. Books fell more frequently, their echoes feeling agitated, expectant. Ink became a constant shadow, rarely leaving my vicinity, its green eyes glowing with unusual intensity. Hemlock grew paler, more withdrawn, retreating to his cottage, muttering about bad tides, and the founder stirring. Sarah pleaded with me to leave before the eclipse. Whatever Blackbriar was planning, Elias, it drove him mad. Don't follow him down that path. But I felt I had no choice. The library's instability was growing. But the containment felt like it was fraying. Blackbriar's final notes offered the only potential path beyond mere management. A chance to fundamentally alter the library's core resonance, perhaps easing the torment of the trapped echoes, establishing a true, lasting peace instead of this tenser, rule-bound truce. It required reaching the library's heart, described as a hidden chamber beneath the founder's study, during the eclipse, with Ink's assent, and performing the ritual involving the catalog and a blood offering. On the night of the eclipse, the library was electric. The air hummed with palpable energy. Dust motes danced frantically in the beams of my flashlight. Sounds amplified unnaturally. The creak of wood, the rustle of paper, my own heartbeat. Following instructions deciphered from the journal, I gathered specific items. Salt from Hemlock's pantry, a specific type of quartz found only in a nearby creek bed, the Ainsworth biography, and the hidden herbal. I made my way to the founder's study. Ink waited for me by the hidden panel behind the fireplace described in the journal. It didn't growl, it simply looked at me, then gave a soft, almost inaudible chirp, and brushed against my leg before melting into the shadows towards the hidden entrance. A scent. My breath hitched. Behind the panel lay a narrow, winding stone staircase descending into cold darkness. At the bottom lay the heart of the library. Not a grand chamber, but a small, circular room. Walls lined with shelves holding not books, but hundreds of small, labeled glass jars containing dust, dried flowers, scraps of parchment, strange geological samples, Blackbriar's essence archive. In the center, on a stone pedestal, lay a single, massive, ancient ledger bound in dark, cracked leather. The catalogue raisonné, the library's true core, as the eclipse outside reached totality, bathing the world above in temporary darkness. A low, resonant hum filled the chamber, emanating from the catalogue itself. The air grew bitingly cold. Whispers swirled around me. Elara Ainsworth, the unblinking reader, the time-lost woman, countless others, their essences momentarily stirred by the celestial alignment. Taking the ritual knife described in the journal, found with the herbal, I made a small, sharp cut on my palm, letting drops of blood fall onto the catalogue's cover. The Caretaker's blood, the journal had instructed, to attune the resonance. Then placing the specific herbs and the quartz crystal on the cover as dictated, I opened the catalogue. Instead of pages, it revealed swirling patterns of light and shadow, resonating with the hum. Following the final, cryptic instructions, I placed the Ainsworth biography gently onto the swirling patterns within the catalogue. Then, focusing all my will, all my intent learned over these months of mediating echoes, I spoke the closing passages described by Blackbriar, a phrase designed not to imprison, but to offer peace, release into the library's memory, rather than then tormented echoing. The library screamed, a high-frequency wave of sound and pressure that threw me back against the stone wall, extinguishing my flashlight. The whispers surged into a cacophony, but beneath the chaos, I felt a subtle shift, the agony lessening, replaced by a wave of profound, ancient sorrow, then quiet acceptance. When the hum faded and the pressure subsided, I relit my flashlight with shaking hands. The catalogue lay closed on the pedestal, seemingly inert. The Ainsworth biography was gone, absorbed or integrated. The air in the chamber felt lighter, cleaner, still ancient, still filled with echoes, but the tormented edge was gone. I emerged back into the main library hours later, as the eclipse ended and dawn broke. The library felt calm, truly calm, for the first time since I'd arrived. Ink rubbed against my leg near the main desk, its purr now a deep, steady, contented rumble, before leaping onto a high shelf to survey its domain. My journey hadn't ended. My custodianship continued. The library was still filled with echoes, still governed by strange properties. But something fundamental had shifted. The rules felt less like absolute commands and more like guidelines for respecting the potent memories held within these walls. The cycle of torment, fueled by Blackbriar's obsessive binding, had been altered. There was potential now, not just for containment but for resolution, one echo at a time. I sat down at the main desk, opened my own logbook. The final sound wasn't a threatening growl or a spectral whisper. It was the soft, steady scratch of my pen across the page, documenting not just anomalies, but the slow, painstaking process of bringing peace to the haunted archives of Blackbriar Library. The work I knew would take a lifetime, my lifetime, and for the first time that felt less like a sentence and more like a purpose. Elias faced the echoes of Blackbriar Library. What a chilling night. If you enjoyed the scares, hit like, share, and subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules. See you in the next nightmare.